Hi guys, this is your girl Wakeji Kamore and welcome to Reflections by Wakeji Kamore. Today we are going to be looking at 2 Chronicles chapter 24. Please pause this recording and read the chapter for yourself so that you understand the story behind there. You can pick up your own lessons. You can see the things that are happening there that I may not be able to mention in the summary. And that the Lord will just speak to you because you have honored and you've taken time to actually listen and learn His word. All right, if you're here for the very first time, please remember to subscribe, to share this, and to hit the notification bell so that you can get the notification of every time a new recording is uploaded. All right, so this chapter is about the youngest king that ever lived in Israel. This was the youngest king that we see, even as we look at all the kings, both in Israel and in Judah. This was the youngest king in Judah, but also that's the youngest king collectively. His name is Joash. Joash is a king that has just been, throned, and the Shosho has been dethroned. The Shosho was the queen, has been dethroned, and now Joash has been throned. And at this point, when he's becoming king, he is 7 years old. Can you imagine a 7-year-old king? So of course, that the fact that he's a 7-year-old king means that he's definitely not capable of becoming a king. And so there's a lot of counsel behind his throne. There's a lot of counsel that is coming from other different places, so that he can be a good leader. And for this specific king, the counsel that he had in his ear was the priest. And this priest's name was Jehoiada, and this is the priest that had taken him in when he was being hidden so that he doesn't get killed. And so this priest had a lot of influence in this king's life. And the Bible says in verse 2 that Joash did what was pleasing in the Lord's sight throughout the lifetime of Jehoiada the priest. So it is very important for us to note that Joash did what was right in the eyes of God in the lifetime of Jehoiada. And when Jehoiada died, we'll see what it is that happened, because vitu zilifanyika huko baadaye, huko mwisho. And at this point, Joash repaired and restored the temple of the Lord, because it was in shambles and it was in real bad state, because Athaliah had broken into the temple of the Lord, and they used to use all the dedicated things of the temple of the Lord to worship the images of Baal. So the temple and the things that were in the temple had really been used up, and they had really been destroyed. So one of the things that he did, Joash, and of course from the council of Jehoiada, is that they collected the taxes of Moses, or rather the taxes that Moses had collected when he was building the tabernacle for the very first time. And he persuaded the people and mobilized the people to bring these gifts and to bring these funds. Mostly, it's actually gifts. It's mostly the silvers, the gold, whatever it is that you could find, that you would bring it. They would put it in a chest, and then they would take the chest into the temple, empty it, put the chest back again outside. People would fill it like that. And the Bible says that every time the chest was full, people would carry it to the king's official and the court secretary, and the officers and the high priest would come and empty the chest and then take it back to the temple again for people to fill it again. And they gave this money to the construction supervisors, who hired masons, carpenters to restore the temple of the Lord. And they also hired metal workers who were welding, who made articles of iron and of bronze for the Lord's temple. And then, funny enough, the thing that I find so interesting and so lovely, and I wish people would do this, is that whenever it is that all the repairs were finished, they brought back the remaining money. You see, these supervisors that were given money, so the money was put back, it was cancelled, it was calculated, as well collected, and tuna calculate tunaona ni ngapi, and then it was given to the construction supervisors, who would now hire the carpenters, the welders, the metal workers, the masons, and all that. And whenever it is that the money remained, they would bring it back to the king. As in, I find that so honest. This is in verse 14. It says, when all the repairs were finished, they brought the remaining money to the king and Jehoiada. It was used to make various articles of the temple of the Lord. And then the king and Jehoiada also didn't cooler the money. They put it to use. They put it to other uses. They made the articles for worship service, for burnt offerings, including the ladles and articles made of gold and silver. And the burnt offerings were sacrificed continually in the temple of the Lord during the lifetime of Jehoiada the priest. These people are very faithful with their money. Their king was very faithful. The priest was very faithful. These supervisors were very faithful with the money. And people gave freely and joyfully. In verse 15, it says that Jehoiada lived to a very old age. He died at 130 and he was buried. Sasa, vituko zinaanza verse 17. Verse 17, after Jehoiada had died. Remember that Jehoiada was the influence. He was the ear in Joash's, he was the sound in Joash's, the voice in Joash's ears. He was the one who was giving him counsel, and it was good counsel. He made him a good king. And for as long as Jehoiada lived, Joash did what was pleasing to the Lord. In verse 17 it says, but after Jehoiada's death, the leaders of Judah came and bowed down before King Joash and persuaded him to listen to their advice. So after Jehoiada died, it's clear that Joash at that point probably didn't know what was right or what was wrong, or he was used to people giving him counsel, so maybe he couldn't make decisions by himself. As in, it's just, it could be many things put together, but the fact that he wasn't just, I think the thing that shocks me is the fact that he had so much influence, so much counsel, and so much, teaching from this priest that he wasn't able to make good decisions. That for me really shocked me. Is it because that all his life, even as a king, he always had someone else telling him probably what to do, and these were good things, so he probably didn't believe in his own decision making, that he still had to get other people to listen to. And unfortunately, he followed the advice of these leaders of Judah, and it was bad counsel. Verse 18 says they decided, king of this Joash guy and these leaders, they decided to abandon the temple of the Lord. Imagine this temple that they have just reconstructed. Sasa tena wameiabandon. Imagine they started worshipping, they worshipped Asherah poles and idols instead. And because of this sin, the divine anger fell on Judah and Jerusalem. Yet the Lord sent prophets to bring them back to him. And the prophets warned them, and still the people would not listen. It's so, we've seen this cycle over and over again, where someone is doing something good and then they start doing something wrong. The Lord is angry. The Lord sends prophet. The prophets warn them. The prophets tell them what to do. The people don't listen. And then the consequences of your sin catch up with you. We've seen this a lot. And one of the things that we learned is that one of the people that the Lord sent was Zechariah. And Zechariah was the son of Jehoiada. This is the son of the priest that had taken care of Joash all his life. And he was sent to Joash to tell him, the Lord is saying, why are you disobeying his commands and you're keeping yourself from prospering? I like this verse. It says, this is what God says. Why do you disobey the Lord's command and keep yourselves from prospering? You have abandoned the Lord, and now he has abandoned you. One of the key things that we learn from this is that when we do not obey the Lord's command, we keep ourselves from prospering. Sisi wenyewe ndio tunajiumiza that when you obey the Lord's command, you prosper. When you don't obey the Lord's commands, you are the one keeping yourself from prospering. And so Zechariah, son of Jehoiada, came and told the king this. But the king was like, The leaders plotted to kill Zechariah, and the king, this King Joash, ordered that they stone him to death in the courtyard of the Lord's temple. And the Bible says in verse 22, this is how King Joash repaid Jehoiada for his loyalty, by killing his son. As in, Joash ameharibika to this extent. Ameharibika, I don't know, he's been filled with such bad counsel that he actually can kill the son of someone who took care of him. Me, in my thought, I'm imagining if Jehoiada was taking care of Joash, I'm sure that Joash and Zechariah probably grew up together, because if Jehoiada had a son called Zechariah and also was taking care of Joash, means Joash and Zechariah grew up together. So he's basically killing this almost like brother because they really grew up together. So he's just like, Mimi, sai kusikiza, I don't want to hear you and your God. I don't want to hear you and what it is that God has to say. And he ordered for him to be killed. And as you can imagine, that will not have very good results. So at some point in verse 25, we see that his own officials plotted to kill him for murdering the son of Jehoiada the priest, and they assassinated him as he laid in bed. And that was just the end of Joash. And Joash became king for 40 years. So that means by the time he's dying, he's probably 47, 48 years old, which is really, really young. I mean, he could have lived to 130, 140, and he could have really reigned for a long period of time. So what it is that we are learning from this chapter, that first, we're just seeing the difference between good counsel and bad counsel. We are seeing that God always, sends people to tell us when we are veering off from his commandments. We've seen that when we veer off out of God's commandments, we are actually preventing ourselves from prospering. And it is so sad that we have seen this cycle over and over again. My question is, are you seeing that cycle? Of that cycle, uko happy kwa hiyo cycle? Are you in a place where God is warning you and you're not listening? Or are you in a place where you're listening to good counsel? Or you're in a place where you've just started listening to bad counsel? Uko happy kwa hiyo cycle? Uko happy kwa hiyo cycle? Just ask yourself, where am I in this cycle? Am I in a place where I'm starting to veer off from God's commands? Am I in a place where I'm listening to good counsel? And how, if that is the space that you're at, how can you not veer off from it? How can you prevent yourself from veering off of it? If you're in a place where you've just started listening to bad counsel, how can you veer yourself back to listening to good counsel? If you're in a place where you've listened to this bad counsel, umefanya vituko na Mungu amekutumia mtu, are you in a place where you can listen? Are you in a place where you can be corrected? Are you in a place where you can be challenged to do better? And the people that God has sent in your life, and you know that God has sent in these people in your life to just come and tell you and to remind you that you are veering off from God's commands. I really pray that if that is the space that you're at, that you would turn back before the consequences of your sin catch up with you. Thank you so much for listening. I really do appreciate that you guys are taking time to go through this book, and see you tomorrow.